Hey everybody, Michael Tucker here from Conversion Store. In today's Marketo user group, we are going to be talking a little bit about the economy and marketing operations. More specifically, how do you make sure that your marketing operations team is set up to make it through an economic downturn or, dare I say it, a recession? We'll talk a little bit about tips and tricks for your Marketo instance, and we'll also talk a little bit about some of the things that you hear inside of the news and what do those mean when you're thinking about the economy, and more specifically, what do they mean to you in your specific business? So I'm looking forward to seeing you there, and welcome to Marketo User Groups. I would love to see that this is the graph that is going to happen for 2023. In all honesty, we really don't know. I think one of the things that you see here with the graph that goes up and down and then goes back up, my guess is that's more than likely what's going to happen this year. But it's beholden to us, especially here at the beginning of the year, to kind of take a look at this and say, okay, what do we have to do in order to make that happen? What do we need to do to make sure that we have the rebound afterwards, that it just doesn't go down, which is certainly easy to do and is certainly possible to do with your Marketo instance and your marketing operations as a whole. So that's a big piece. A couple of things about our group values, and especially for those of you where this is your first Marketo user group, it really important to understand that this is a safe space to learn. So like I said at the beginning, I have been in this a long time, was in the champion program in 2021. This year, actually, I sat on the committee to help write the questions for the Marketo Certified Expert exam. And I've done a lot inside of the industry and the community, but again, I have questions all the time. I'm always trying to ask questions and always trying to participate in different discussions to learn more because things keep changing. And so I want to encourage you to be able to ask questions as well and to speak up if there's something that you're not familiar with, you don't know. There's no such thing as a dumb question. This is a safe space to be able to learn. And if it's not a safe space, then tell me, and I'm going to make sure it is a safe space because one of the things that really turns me off, that's a pet peeve of mine, is judgmentalism and anything that kind of stands in the way of creating open environments for people to talk and learn and grow with each other. Want this to be completely collaborative. So you'll notice this is not a webinar. This is Zoom meetings. So you can go off mute. You can ask me questions. You can ask each other questions. If I don't have the answer to the question that you're asking, I'm going to throw it out there and hope that other people in the audience have the answer as well too. Because I think that's the best way to be able to learn. And one of the things that I dearly miss or things like the champion bars or the some of the open events that allow you to be able to kind of compare and mix and match opinions from different people who are experts in the field. I find it so interesting to see some of the different advice that I necessarily wouldn't have given, but it actually applies and it actually winds up solving the problem. And I find it always interesting and delighted to be able to do that. And that's one of the things that's great about Marketo. Want them to be fun, enjoyable sessions. So we've done a lot of different interesting sessions over the years. My favorite was doing like a parking lot party, which was like building a fictitious Marketo program out of a country music concert that happened outside of Atlanta. I just think that that's something that you don't see all the time, and I think there's something to be said for creativity in terms of kind of enjoying the way that you use this technology for something that's unorthodox. And so, if anybody has ideas about how to do that, we're going to throw out a couple of ideas here. And one of the things that I want to build as part of this presentation is I would love our next Marketo user group to be, I'd love somebody to come up as a guest speaker here who has been laid off, who is going through the economic downturn, and to use this platform in a way to be able to help them continue to kind of move to the next step in their career. I think that would be a really good thing to be able to do for this. So it's not just about me talking about Conversion Store and the Marketo consulting that we do, that it actually kind of gives something back and that it has some some absolute value to the marketing community as a whole. And that's my next point, I guess, is this really should be producing, well, stumbled there for a second, some professional value added activity that you can then take and use in your respective marketing departments or in your careers, and just kind of move you forward, basically, whatever forward means for you. Anybody have any questions about those right now? Speak up or forever hold your peace. I'm happy to be able to kind of address those immediately. All right, hearing none. So a couple of things that we're going to go through today. We'll talk about some learning resources. So a user group like this one is definitely a good starting off point. And thank you so much for attending. I know you've got a lot of things to do out of your day, so appreciate you spending some time here with us. Some upcoming events. So in tandem with this, one of the things that we started doing in 2022 is Marketo Learning Lounges. So this user group usually is on a piece of focused content. So this time it was about, it's about the economy. It's about, the marketing industry as a whole. Last time we did a session on email deliverability and campaign best practices. We will do more of these type of things. So I'm looking for a speaker to come up for like a February or probably a March event. Maybe not March because of all the events that are happening, but a February event would be nice to be able to share some of their experiences too. And if you go to conversionstore.com/videos, you'll see our YouTube channels that has been around for 6 years, has over, I think there's about 120 different hours of content that's on there from Marketo experts all over the world. And it was really helpful during the pandemic to be able to help people learn to kind of grow in a period of really difficult time. And then we'll do our feature presentation, and then we will go off of, so this is recorded and this is live streamed on LinkedIn. Hello, LinkedIn. If there are questions and answers, we will turn the live stream and the recording off. And that way people that can ask questions candidly, and they don't have to worry about being broadcast out to, 3,000 different people basically over LinkedIn. Questions about that? Okay, so another resource that I want to point you to, marketominutes.com. Website that we created really to help foster more learning and development. These are quick 15-minute episodes that I've been building out to just show people about Marketo. One of the things that a lot of people find difficult about Marketo is the real way to dive in and get your hands dirty in Marketo is to own a Marketo instance. And to own a Marketo instance in some cases can cost upwards of $20,000 a year or more. And do you have that unless you're working in a company that already has it? And how do you get a company to hire you to be a Marketo user if you don't have hands-on experience in Marketo? It's kind of a catch-22 sort of a situation, right? So I'm trying to basically take our sandbox and be able to share elements of it with you, and with just the mass public to be able to kind of show them, okay, here's some things about Marketo. I can't teach you everything that I've picked up over the last 6-7 years in a 15-minute video, but I figure if we take enough of these and we work on them piecemeal with everything else that we have, we should be in pretty good shape to be able to help a couple of people at least get an intro and get kind of a fighting chance to be able to get into the community, because we don't have enough people. It's very siloed. It's arguably an oligopoly since we're talking about economics. And that's not great for marketing managers. And as a whole, it drives up the price of services to get anything done inside of Marketo artificially, in my opinion. And it's just not good for user adoption as a whole, right? Marketo shouldn't be, like a Catholic mass held in Latin. It should be something that everybody can participate in. So marketominutes.com is that. We also have a event calendar. So we'll talk about events at the end of this, but important to note that there are a lot of different types of events in the marketing community. And I mean the marketing community and broadly, not these Slack communities. I mean, there are a lot of different American Marketing Association, Association of National Advertisers, a ton of different trade organizations that are centered around different parts of marketing, which are worth looking at. I don't think enough people know that that is the when you talk about marketing communities, it means much more than the pieces that are commonly associated with Marketo. And that's a huge missed opportunity, by the way. If you are here and you're looking to find work, or you're job hunting, or you've been laid off, don't go where everyone else is going, because you just wind up being one in 1,000 people. You go where people aren't, where there's a perceived need, and then you're one in 10, 1 in 150. Much better odds in your favor. So to that point, we built out this YouTube channel. So I highly recommend you go there, have a redirect here, conversionstore.com/videos, or you can search in YouTube for Marketo virtual user groups or Marketo minutes. And our next learning lounge, oh, that's not November 17th. Sorry about that. It should be January the 26th, the date at the end. It's the second to last Thursday of the month. You can sign into that, bring any questions that you want, completely open session. We had 25 people last time that were really interesting. A couple of CMOs in there, a whole bunch of different people that were in different parts of their Marketo instance, just throwing out questions, talking about their instance, completely unrecorded, completely unscripted. Let's just get together and learn. Very much like these three, let's just compare notes. And so, we'll have some Q&A at the end of this if somebody has something really urgent, but otherwise sign up for this. You can do it on the marketominutes.com site. All right. Feature presentation is marketing operations in uncertain times. Before I get into this, does anybody have any questions on any of the slides that I just talked about, just presented? Anything that I missed that you want to bring up and just talk through? Okay. All right. Great stuff. Okay. So lots of stuff. We're recording this right now in January of 2023. I'm sure people are going to watch this 6 months or a year from now and go, that Michael Tucker either, had a couple of really good points or was completely off the mark. Because we don't know what's ahead in 2023. I always get a kick out of these investment guys, and love some of the stuff. I mean, it's kind of cliche to quote Warren Buffett, but that value investing, about trying to time the marketplace. When do you buy stock? And I have made all sorts of mistakes trying to figure that question out. I was one of the people that bought BlackBerry stock when Microsoft was talking about acquiring them, thinking, oh, that's going to happen. That never happened. And it was foolish to even try and guess back then. But that's the important thing is that, while we're trying to plan for 2023, we're in January, we're trying to do budgeting. It's a good idea to start looking at this and trying to build contingencies. If this happens, I'm going to do this. If that happens, I'm going to do that. And it's because we are managing a really important function of a company in marketing. So, we no joke, right? Let's take a look at some of the trends that we're seeing over the last year here. And so really great. I found this while I was researching for this topic, this website called layoffs.fyi that a founder of a startup created in order to be able to help to tabulate and report on some of the data that's happening, because you hear all these reports about the economy as a whole and these mass layoffs. And it's frightening when you think about it. When you hear about these huge 10,000 people, 8,000 people between Amazon and Salesforce over the last month and a half, 2 months, that's pretty scary. And what does that mean for our overall economy? Because it does trickle back to us, whether we like it or not, or whether we're willing to admit it or not in marketing operations. Hey, this has an impact on people's propensity to be able to spend and on what happens to our sales pipelines. So, the blue graph is about companies. The red bar is about employees laid off. Notice a couple of trends here that you see in November and in January, where we have this huge number of employees versus companies that are doing layoffs. And these are where you see the blips, where you see some mass layoffs that are happening by companies. Since COVID-19, we had kind of this initial part, what Q2 2020 would have been March, April of 2020 when the first lockdowns happened. So you see a huge spike that happened here. And then a second wave that is hitting us now, that's going through, 2022. And the economists are calling that kind of the rebound effect, right? Is you had all these people that suddenly shifted to work from home. Now kind of a mix of people coming back into the office. I'd like to think that this Q1 number is going to be a course correction, but given that we're in January of 2023, it's probably that just the data hasn't completely filled out for the rest of the quarter yet. So is it going to be higher? Is it going to be lower? We don't know. Ironically, today of all days is the day that the Federal Reserve is releasing the new consumer price index numbers. So I don't know what's happening with inflation now. I thought I saw something at lunch today that it dipped slightly, but the other thing that they said is that if I remember the quote correctly, not an economist, liked it in college but didn't major in it. But they're saying that they aren't going to stop doing interest rate increases until they see, I think, 1 or 2 more months of reduced inflation, which means if you are borrowing money, or the venture capital firm is leveraged in order to be able to fund the business that you're working in, that's important. That's super important. And it also impacts, as people are increasing their prices, what you are able to buy with a dollar. So that has impacts both in terms of buying advertising or buying MarTech solutions to be able to churn in qualified leads in from some of that advertising or paid media or other resources where you're spending your dollars. We'll talk a little bit. I mean, industry wise, I think the thing that I found really interesting in this, and by the way, anybody who has like an economics background, jump in and add some insight into this. I'm all ears. But I find it interesting. This is year over year by sector. So everything in red is the layoffs in 2020. So you see that kind of U shape, right? Where 2021 wasn't so bad. In 2022 is kind of well, it looks like it's higher than 2020. So really you look at that and kind of say, okay, well, that's a correction and then some, right? So, what is causing that? So that's worth drilling into. And we're going to do that in a couple slides here. So some mass layoffs here, Meta, Amazon, Salesforce, Twitter, those are the tech layoffs that we hear about. If you're not in tech, but you're still using digital marketing, right, that still has an impact in terms of, what does that mean in terms of stability of the platforms? I don't know the answer to that, right? But do you see changes that are going to happen with some of the product roadmaps? Maybe what does that mean basically for some of these platforms as we're moving forward and you're seeing amalgamation that's happening? It might be an opportunity, to be honest with you. It might mean that there's a ton of really good talent that you can pick up and incorporate into your marketing team. It might mean that you have more competition for in your specific space, right? In consulting, right? We see kind of competition that comes up from that, right? As people have more choices to be able to choose from, it breeds competition, which isn't a bad thing in and of itself, but it's worth noting and making sure that you prepare for it. And so you have to understand, right, that a lot of these streaming platforms that we use, or subscription-based platforms, right, the whole SaaS industry in many ways is built off of this recurring revenue, and a lot of that is run through things like credit cards and financing costs. In order to be able to build out, even if you're not using it as a credit card as a form of payment, or you're paying it off every month, right? What sort of financing options does your company as a whole do in order to be able to fulfill some of the cash flow requirements needed to be able to sell subscription software? The payback period on that isn't instant. In some cases, in the SaaS companies that I have worked in during my sales career, that payback period was as long as 18 months out. And so you have a whole bunch of expenses at the beginning of that process that your company needs to finance one way or another until that payback period hits. And hopefully that's within year one. But that's why you'll always see these, annual contracts or biannual contracts that a lot of these SaaS companies are trying to commit you to. These interest rate increases have major changes in terms of the economics of what's available with that. So it's worth kind of taking note. And it's not a bad idea to kind of talk to your CFO and kind of compare notes and just kind of get a sense of, what were your budget projections like for this year, and have those changed with each of these rate increases? How much exposure and risk do your respective companies have with that, right? Not every company's like that. Some companies are averse to debt, averse to financing. Just finished this really great book called Small Giants, about companies that kept themselves intentionally small in order to be able to live within their means. They're not flashy. They're not the companies that you see on the stock tickers or that make a lot of the news. But when you look at our economy as a whole, the companies that you do see on the news are a very small sliver of the overall U.S. economy and arguably the global economy. So not worth ignoring that you can be a really successful company and not rely on all of these different financing options. It can be done, and it should be done in a lot of ways to be able to be successful. And what do they call it in accounting? Cash flow from operations. That's one of the things that's really important to kind of focus on. And then looking at this as well too. So if your company is built in off of has professional investors that are inside of it, right? Like venture capitalists, people like that. They're investing in your company because they're looking for an exit strategy of some sort. In many cases, that exit strategy involves going through IPO, or going through some sort of a merger and acquisition. Marketo itself went through that, right? With the, think about all of the different times that they sold initially to Vista Equity, and then Vista flipped that again to Adobe and made a bundle of money on it. How much of that money was raised off of debt financing? And do these interest rates mean that you're not going to be able to make those type of transactions, or it's going to be a lot harder to do that? I asked the question, do I have the answer? Not exactly, but it's a piece for you to be able to think about, especially. So that's on a macro level, right? In terms of being able to buy and sell your company. What about the transactions that you make? Marketo is a B2B platform. And so because of that, we have some users. I know a couple of people that work in like aerospace, for example, in Marketo, and work in industries where their typical purchase is, north of $10 million. Are those cash transactions? Probably not. They probably involve financing and for every single type of transaction that they do. So it's worth kind of looking at this and saying, what do we need to do in 2023? Should we focus our nurtures on doing things like identifying and offering some of those different financing options? If you think about B2C, right, a lot of the automotive companies offer these no interest lease packages for new automobiles, things like that, to kind of offset the depreciation of a new car when you buy it. How can we as marketers incorporate some of those sentiments into our marketing communications as people are moving through the customer journey? We'd be remiss to ignore some of the effects, some of the fear, for lack of a better word, that you're seeing coming in through the talk of the economy, or just lack of confidence, lack of consumer confidence, right? It's better to address those in your nurtures and be able to have points to kind of address those and speak to them and basically bring people back to what's really important, which is the value that people get from buying the good or service that your company offers that you as a marketer are trying to espouse to your target audience. So really important to kind of pull back in here and say, look at all of your nurtures. If you are seeing churn that's coming in off of those, it's worth testing and seeing if maybe maybe it's such an involved purchase that the fear that you're seeing in the marketplace right now is what's causing a delay in terms of that breakout, basically, that of your pipeline. The other thing that we see here too, so lots of layoffs that you were seeing from the numbers 2 slides ago, but the good thing for us as marketing operations people is that they're not the mass numbers that you're seeing are not marketers. Now, part of that might be because in the grand scheme of those large tech companies, proportionally, we're a smaller part of the headcount, right? I just grabbed this from one of the data sets that I saw of, let's see, 1115 Twitter employees, which, if I saw the numbers correctly, is a little under 30% of the total layoffs that were from that group, at least in this data set. And a lot of those relate to product, right? A lot of those are software engineers. So that's not great, right? I feel for anybody who loses their job through a layoff through no fault of their own. But marketing operations is not the place where you want to be cutting costs as leadership. I hope your leadership feels the same way. We as a group are the part of the marketing function that are delivering the qualified leads that turn into sales, that bring cash flow, that are the antidote, if you will, to a faltering economy, to a recession. So that's the area that we want to be able to focus on. Now, that being said, we are not immune. Layoffs are happening in marketing. So same data set, I just did a search under marketing to kind of see, and you'll notice these are just two different roles, right? But you can see within Twitter, you're seeing senior marketers, head of digital marketing managers, head of marketing for Canada. It's a pretty impressive. Impressive isn't the right word. Exhaustive list, I guess we'll call it, in terms of people that are also part of the cuts in marketing. So we're in it as well too. Now there's some questions here. I just have the data, but are the layoffs quiet quitting? Right? We all heard some of the edicts that were coming out of Twitter about we're not going to do remote work. You have to be in place. That does not fit with my culture. It's not the culture that we build at Conversion Store. I would be one of the people that would be quitting on a matter of principle. So that's possible between the lines of this, right? Are these people leaving just to go to better jobs? You see a lot of really talented roles that are here, which indicates that there's a lot of talent behind them. I'm assuming that you don't become the head of Twitter Canada's marketing by not having quite a few impressive home runs under your belt prior to coming into that. So do they just go off to better opportunities? One of the things that Microsoft always had over the years in the 90s was this thing where a lot of people would leave because they'd have this ranked employee performance piece where the bottom 30% of your organization, of your team, would be penalized regardless of whether your entire team performed well. And a lot of people buckled against that and left. And it's why they changed a lot of that in the 2000s. So is that part of what's happening here? And how many of these roles are related to marketing operations, and what we're doing in terms of being able to kind of help to embolden the sales function of a company, and how many of them are around brand marketing And not that you don't need brand marketing in and that's not an important part. That is a really important part of a company's marketing team. But it's an area, if you're really strapped for cash, that if you're a leader of a company, that you might look at and go, is this the time for us to do a rebrand or to work on an updated piece of marketing collateral or to update our brand book versus the leads that we are directly talking to, right? I would argue that those are both interrelated to each other and have a symbiotic relationship, and you can't cut one without hurting the other. But at the end of the day, you really have to look at this from a financial perspective and say, we only have so much money. Scarcity is a thing. So how do we allocate that and kind of work appropriately to be able to get the most from our money? So a couple of things here, right? And so the first part, the first point here talks about the problem is that I think we're going to see some depressed sales pipelines. Does it mean that we'll be able to build profit over that period of time? No, but it might mean it takes a little bit longer to be able to get it. It might mean that we have to get creative in terms of the way that we get it. Some of the things we talked about before, right? Can you offer financing to your to expedite pipeline? I you know I know my undergraduate marketing professors would kind of would chide me for saying, should you discount, right? That, remember the 4 Ps: product, place, price, promotion, right? Is it worthwhile discounting? Can you offer it to a different marketplace? Loyalty becomes a big part of this as well too, right? Is how do I keep the existing customers that I have? How do I grow market share if my market is declining because of what's happening with the economy? Can I gain market share from my competitors? Can I offer a value proposition that helps somebody who's already has an identified need that is being serviced move to my area? Can I grow in a declining economy? That's one way to do it as well too. And as funding sources become scarce, we really need to think about how do we, our clients are thinking about how to keep liquidity, right? Your buyers are figuring out, well, I need liquidity. I don't know how long this recession is going to last. They normally talk about them lasting, I think, 1 to 2 quarters. I think by definition, a recession is 2 quarters consecutively of negative GDP. Great when you're thinking about macroeconomics. When you're thinking about microeconomics, when you're thinking about your industry and at a level, right, you want to be able to keep enough liquidity, keep enough cash on hand to be bolstered if your sales pipeline in point one, it's pushed even further out. So one thing I would highly recommend that you do, let's talk about Marketo for a second, is, make sure that if you don't have your Marketo instance configured to your CRM, do that. If you don't have opportunities that are tracked in your CRM and that those opportunities are mapped back to your Marketo instance, do that. And also make sure that the value of those opportunities are properly being sent back to Marketo as well too. And why do I say that? Well, twofold is, number one, it gives you a better way to be able to tell the people that are engaging with your marketing program and how much value at a dollar level you are creating. And number two, it gives you the ability to be able to differentiate and use those values to be able to really move people further down the middle and bottom of funnel of your customer journey. So that's a piece. Like, let's bring that back for a second here to Marketo. Anybody have any stories that they can share, anything like that, about how they use opportunities inside of their Marketo instance that they want to share about? Okay, I'm seeing silence here. But feel free to come off of mute. I would love to hear back from you guys about some of that as well too. Okay, so a couple of things. If you have lost your job, and it's happened to me before. I remember 2008. Oh, 2008 was a brutal year for me. I had moved from Vancouver to Chicago, and trying to compete. And this was before the recession. The recession hit. all of these wonderful, talented marketers were laid off in the Chicago area, and I found myself job interview to job interview to job interview, going against some amazing candidates from some of the best business schools in the U.S. with my Canadian degree, and hiring managers going, "You're from where? You did what?" Mind you, I'm really happy with my alma mater, and I think that was a good spot. But to my previous point, right, is you need to figure out how to differentiate yourself. So pause and just take a deep breath, right? Don't jump in like the next day to the job market and start pounding the pavement. Look, review kind of what happened and where you are at. I mean, maybe you need to do that from a personal finance perspective, and that's okay. But try, if you can, take a couple of days and kind of think through about where you just were and where you want to go from a next step. It's easier said than done. I get that, right? And you want to dive back in, but sometimes you can make even worse decisions, and go down the wrong path, by looking at your needs versus what your wants are, and where you want to go in the long run, right? Your career is like a giant sailing ship, right? You can't just make a sharp right hand turn on it. I mean, there's a couple of times that you can do that, but it takes a lot of work and you have to make a lot of sacrifices to be able to do that. What's more likely is you have to turn in increments, right? And so this is your point to be able to do that, is to kind of say, okay, where do I want to go next? And one of the, if you can take any good things about being laid off, it's that it qualifies you for a bunch of different job creation programs. Depends on where you are, mind you. But I remember in Canada, when I was going through that, there was a lot of opportunities. If you're on unemployment or eligible for unemployment insurance, you have a whole series of different credits that become available to you, whether that's going back to school and getting reeducated, or going through training programs, or going through job search programs. If you quit, you're usually not eligible for those. But if you're going through a layoff, you are. So because it's in every level of government's best interest that you get back out into the job market as quickly as possible. So they put a lot of resources there for you. So use those and go. So I want to say here that go to the communities, but I have noticed over the past couple of years, having been, I was the first Marketo chair for the MoPros community. I have been in the Marketo user group community through the ups and downs of the pandemic. It's a good place to be able to learn parts of the craft. Is it the best place in order to be able to find job opportunities? Yes and no. Yes, a lot of recruiters will post up jobs that are into those communities immediately. So it's a good place to see a lot of the listings. However, you have a lot of competition. The reason why the recruiters are going there is because that's where all of the people are. And so you may have an amazing CV and be able to say, I'm at a point in my career where I am heads over shoulders out of a list of 150 talented marketing operations professionals. I know my background, as long as I get in the room, what did Don Draper say? Just get me in the room, right? Then I can beat that. I don't know. To me, second place is the first loser when it comes to interviewing on these sort of things. Sometimes you run into spots where the recruiter and interviewer is really deft and can find another opportunity for you. That is the exception rather than the rule. So you have to think about it in terms of the numbers. And I would say that if you can go to the marketing operations communities to try and learn as much as you can, and then take that knowledge and go somewhere else. Don't just sit there with it and hope that if you keep answering everything that you're going to get there. There are a lot of people that want to get into this line of work, and it's not easy to be able to do. So worth kind of saying, a better way is to demonstrate your USP, just like you would if you're, when you get the job as a marketer, right? Is you don't just go in and say, okay, thanks for coming to my website. Here's the email address to send to sales, and we'll go ahead and write up your order right away. You're building all of this value, right? You're doing a demo video, you're offering a white paper, you're going through this YouTube series that we produce, right? The Marketo user groups. Let's call a spade a spade. Part of the reason why I do this is because I'm demonstrating the value of what we produce at Conversion Store, and what I'm able to do to be able to help people with their Marketo instances, and with their digital marketing as a whole. Right? I mean, I'd like to think I'm a nice guy, and I do it from the bottom of my heart, and that is a part of it. But I have bills to pay, just like you and everybody else too, and just like you'll see in these groups as well too. So one of the important things to be really pragmatic about these groups, these free marketing communities, there's always, I just heard this morning from one of the founders of a non-free one, is that there's always an ulterior motive, right? It's always run by a company that wants you to buy their service, or it's run by a group that's basically looking to be able to build leads out of it, right? I mean, let's call a spade a spade. You just can't run a community as a complete charity without any fun. You can't even run a charity without asking for donations at some point. So it's important to recognize that, right? Is that you are the product when in these free communities, just like you are in social media. So an important piece is here is to kind of think about this, and I don't know, I was just thinking about this. So hopefully this, I don't think this is a quote from somebody, but the way I think about it is that everybody has a resume. Some of you will have portfolios, but very few people will have a personal brand that they're kind of curating, or a reputation that kind of precedes them. And that's an area where you can find a real point of differentiation. I should have found this actually. Where I used to live in Toronto, there was this really innovative undergraduate student who got out of a 2-year marketing program, and she realized that there was a huge that the numbers don't really work in her favor, just given she's competing with the entire class that she went to school with to find a good a starting off job, plus everybody that's available in the industry. So she stood on the corner of Bay Street and Bloor Street. It's like a major intersection in Toronto where all of the banks are in the financial hub, with a sandwich board that said, "I just graduated. Here's my GPA." And had a pile of resumes. And she literally stood out there for I think like 3 or 4 hours, and handed them out to executives as they were walking down the street getting lunch. And she walked away with I think like 40 different interviews off of that one publicity stunt, if you want to call it that, right? If you think about an integrated marketing communications plan, that's really brilliant. And that's really a point of differentiation that really sets you apart. So how do you do activities like that? And I didn't build a slide for this, but one thing I want to offer to you, if you message me on LinkedIn or you email me, I would love our next user group session to be a presentation, or maybe a couple of presentations if a couple of you are interested in it, from people who are interested in participating and presenting some of their big wins. We all have that story about something amazing that we did in our careers, a really good campaign, a tool that we built out, a Marketo program that was really sophisticated. If you are open to sharing those with me, and of course, a lot of you have non-disclosure agreements, so we'll anonymize it if you want to, or not if you don't. And I would love our next session to be able to do that. So, my email is michael@conversionstore.com, and or you can go to hello@conversionstore.com. We'll be happy to be able to bring that up. Okay, I'm seeing a note in the chat here. Oh, from Jeff. Hey man, hey, how are you? How about for pay awards? For pay awards. Oh, I see what you're saying. Are you, well, wait, maybe I don't see what you're saying. Are you mean like awards where they're going to the people that are paying the most to be able to go there, or buy the brand or something like that? Yeah, exactly. So Jeff's just saying, as you're mentioning, like free communities, right? That's a great point. Is that there's it's not just a zero sum, right? You have to kind of keep those things in mind and understand exactly what you're getting, and understand, I think the piece of that too is like to understand that there are areas that you're welcome to be there as a learner, but the moment that you're there, I've been in communities where suddenly if I want to contribute, I'm not welcome any longer, right? Which is okay, I guess. I mean, if they own the community, it's their right to be able to do that. But that's not like a true community. I had my Mayberry coffee mug from like the Andy Griffith show, and I really like those communities that are like Mayberry and not like Times Square where everything's a billboard and you have to worry about being pickpocketed, right? And so I have strong opinions about that, and it's a reason why I don't really participate in a lot of those communities anymore. Is as I just want open interactions, and I wanted places to be able to learn and contribute. All right, so the next piece about this is we have this, we're talking here a little bit about the economy and what sort of financial pressures that puts on companies and what that a great business model, and they have an incredible amount of money to be able to sustain and grow, and pay for all of those perks. Not every company has that, and especially when you're in financial pressures, how do you continue to keep that culture, and in order to be able to keep headcount, and in order to be able to keep people engaged and working, and don't have them join a company and only to be able to find that it's a completely different company now that they're in it because times have gotten tough. That it's a challenge. I find it with my people, as I'm leading and as I'm seeing different teams and trying to help to keep culture. And so we want to talk a little bit about this from an organizational development perspective. The cost of hiring and training, it takes a lot to be able to onboard somebody. Part of the reason why we want to have job retention, is because when somebody leaves, and especially like in the area where we work in services, our product, our offering is basically the what's between your ears. It's the knowledge, it's the experience of all of the people that work for us. And having somebody go, I mean, you can do the greatest job of documenting it, but there's always something that gets missed. I think it was called ghost knowledge, if I remember correctly, is those little nuances that you really only pick up over time from experience. And so it's important to be able to provide a great onboarding experience. What's challenging though is that if you need to have so much runway in order to be able to move somebody through the customer journey, it means that you might not see a payback on that initial hire, and all of the onboarding until several months down the road, or maybe years, depends on what it is, right? But if you think about, I think a lot about like the sales group in at Marketo, for example. That's a high purchase in order to be able to make, right? How long does it take for a salesperson to be able to pay back all of the training that Marketo Adobe puts into, to be able to onboard a person like that? It's definitely worthwhile. It should be done. And I'm not saying that we stop doing that, but I'm just saying that you have to figure out, as that's not a great example is there's a company that's well financed like that, right? But if you're a startup, if you haven't hit Series A funding yet, if you are in Series A, maybe you could argue that okay, how do I be able to get more with the money that I've got, right? It's going to be harder in this next couple of quarters to be able to raise more money. So either you have profit from operations, or you are really gonna you might be able to do more financing, but understand with the interest rate increasing like that, what does that mean in terms of the ability for you to get, is it either a lower amount or do you have to pay higher financing costs because of that? And what does that mean for your business operating in the future? So, this is a great example of that. Remote learning, mentoring is a great example of that. Love some of the mentors that I have been lucky enough to meet in different ways. And they come from a lot of different places. Some of them come from, local incubators that I've worked with here. They come from different local levels of government. They come from angel investors. They come from people that just, I try and build this to be able to pay it forward. I had this great saying, you don't have to pay me back, but you should pay it forward. And so try and go out and look for that. And you'd be amazed, we had our corporate mailbox when I first moved to Charlotte at the UPS store. And just talking to the owner of UPS store, it turned out that he owned 4 convenience stores. Now, he doesn't have a great knowledge of marketing technology, but he does have a pretty good understanding of things like taxes and local municipal taxes and areas like that. Those are resources that that you might not think of, but they're certainly applicable. And I can tell you, having started a company and moved that company from Canada to the US, boy, have I been really lucky to have some really generous people that have helped me to be able to share some of their knowledge to be able to help go through some of the hurdles that we've gone through. And outsourcing is a solution, right? Listen, if you want to increase headcount, then definitely, if you can make a case for doing that, but understand, and one of the things that, I've been learning over the time is that you have a lot of different overhead from the equipment that you have to buy. If the person requires telephone equipment, if they require computer equipment, the training equipment that we just talked about, and then there's the time that it takes in order to be able to effectively manage and train that person as they get to know their role and get comfortable with it. And in addition to that, there's all of the overhead. Now, I don't know what part of the world that each of you are in, but here in the United States, you have you have federal reporting, you have reporting by state, you have reporting within the city or the municipality that you live in, for taxes and it's payroll taxes and it's business taxes. I'm not opposed to it in and of itself, and this isn't a political conversation, but because that money goes to finance a lot of different important things that maintain our quality of life. But you also have to keep in mind that it's not just the salary that you are quoting is what goes into your bottom line. There's a lot of other ancillary costs that happen above and beyond that, and it can expand the cost that goes into your bottom line pretty significantly. So consulting is a good way to be able to get around that, I think, is one of the things. So one of the last things that I want to kind of mention here and just talking about making your dollar move a lot further, right, is one of the things that we're getting into right now. Conference seasons are coming back. I'm actually really excited about that. As much as I love working from home and from building all of these virtual environments over the last several years, I recognize that there are things that get missed in a real world environment. So I'm grateful for those to come back. Now, that being said, we're seeing, when you look at inflation, I think you'll all see from the news too, travel costs are one of the areas that have been hit highest with inflation. If it's the price of gasoline, if it's the price of airfare, if it's the price of hotels, they took a pretty bad hit in 2020. So you have to understand as well too, that they are under a lot of financial pressure. I can only imagine if I was a hotelier, what sort of pressure I need to do to be able to make up some of the losses and some of the other, we have a hard time, but in my opinion, they have an even harder time being in an in-person environment and having survived through lockdown. So I want to look at 3 different options here because we're hearing a lot about different types of in-person learning that's available. And it's important to kind of look at this and say, it doesn't, just because the brand names look a lot like what you're using, that's not necessarily the best place to be able to send your team. So comparing 3 different ones here, right, is Adobe Summit is coming up in March. But the important thing to understand is that this is different than Marketo Summit that we were going to before the pandemic. It is a different conference. And Pavilion is offering a CMO summit that's happening around that same period of time. And just for fun, something that I attend a lot is Digital Summit, which is a series of different conferences that happen all over the US, that offer a lot of different value. And so each of these three different conferences, one is not better than any of the others. It depends on where you are in your business, where you are in your marketing team about which one you should attend. And so I'm offering this to you to be able to take with it as you will, but I want to do a comparison on each of these three so that you have a little bit of an idea before you fork out a lot of money on one particular conference, because that's an experience. Once you're committed into it, it's a good experience for you to take your people to these conferences, but you also want them to be able to get something out of it that they can take back to your company to be able to bring a return on investment. You're not just paying for them to go on a vacation, you are paying for them to be able to do something that basically builds value for your business. So Adobe Summit is scheduled in Las Vegas. It's March 19th to the 23rd. There's a day, I think 19th includes like a day of learning. I think it might be the 18th is the starting off point. It's like the Sunday, it goes to Thursday for that week. So there's a couple of days of university of learning sessions that are there, and then another 3 days of Adobe Summit. And again, like I said, having gone to Marketo Summit previously, there's value to it, but it's a lot different in my opinion. And arguably so, right? Is that, a lot of interesting celebrities. I'd never, seen Mindy Kaling or Reese Witherspoon or anybody like that in person before going to an Adobe Summit event. So that's pretty neat. But I can't say that I look to those people a lot for advice about marketing technology or how to run my Marketo instances. So that you're kind of paying for that, right? So yeah, I want you to understand that you're also paying really for the sponsors, right? Like a smaller shop like ours, we don't get as much exposure as like Deloitte or Accenture or the gold or platinum sponsored partners, because we're just not paying Adobe the kind of money that nor could we, to be able to compete with the firms that are servicing the Fortune 50. And I don't think we would want to either, right? We're really looking to work with the small, medium, mid-market businesses that use Marketo, and only Marketo, to be honest with you. And so what the thing to understand here is that Marketo Summit, after being acquired, was folded into Adobe Summit. It's for everybody who uses all of the Adobe Experience Cloud, which means that half of those sessions or part of those sessions are going to people that are using Adobe Target, that are going to use Adobe Campaign, that are going to use Adobe Analytics. So it's not the same experience as having one conference that's dedicated to Marketo. If you own multiple pieces, multiple software components inside of the Experience Cloud, that's a good place for you to be able to go and to get all of those knowledge, all of that knowledge within one conference. Many of the groups that we work with do not. And so you'll see a lot of the content that's there is almost entirely run by Adobe employees now, where historically Marketo Summit was run by people who are practitioners, who are me, who are Jeff, who are some of the other people that are here sharing experiences about that we've learned from being hands-on, and then sharing kind of recipes that you could actually take and use directly inside of your instance when you got back to your office. That's not really the case as much anymore. I mean, I think it still is in a small way, but a lot of the content that we've seen over the past couple of years has been more of like product demos, I want to say, and more of customer testimonials. And it's, here's the value that we had after we went through all of the implementation. It's less tactical, it's less hands-on. The other thing to understand here is it's expensive. If I'm going to show you the other numbers, and I'm not meaning it as a dig, but I just have to tell you, apples to apples, it's $2,100 to attend. Plus, if you want to go to some of the higher value sessions, they're $900 for a session to be able to attend those. So you need at least $3,000 per person to be able to really bring an employee to those sessions. We're going to do some things. I'm going to go, but mainly because I think it's worthwhile if you're consulting on the platform to be able to attend, and it gives me a chance to be able to understand the product roadmap. So I'm going to do a couple of things to be able to help make some of that available to people who can't attend. And I think a lot of people can't attend, to be really honest with you, at $3,000 a head count. But so that's worthwhile. Keep an eye out for that. But you need to consider that is, do I own multiple tools inside of the Experience Cloud tech stack? And do I have do I have a business case to be able to justify that kind of spend? If you're a major company, then that might not be a huge spend, but a lot of the groups that I work with at that mid-market level would find that to be a pretty expensive spend. And the other thing to compare that against is to look at, so here's an adjacent event that's happening in San Francisco instead of Las Vegas. So probably a little bit higher costs, admittedly, to find hotel rooms in San Francisco, and a little less central than Las Vegas from a flights perspective. I think San Francisco's a United hub, if I remember correctly. So that's happening the same day as the last day of Adobe Summit, right? But Pavilion is a community that I spend a lot of time in now too, and I have an executive membership there, which costs a fair bit, but I get a lot of resources there, and I know just off the bat, love that community. If you get a chance, it's joinpavilion.com. And that's where I'm spending my time in now, because it's not entirely the Marketo crowd. It's that plus a whole group of people who are revenue CROs, people, revenue operations leaders. And I find that the content that they offer has been incredibly beneficial for me. So they are doing a 1-day session. It's executive leadership. It's really almost exclusively for CMOs. It's a very small crowd. Adobe Summit will bring, I think the last one that was in person was about 17,000 people. Pavilion Summit, where maybe 500, I think, is their capacity. I want to say it's less than that. They are doing their CEO Summit right now in Miami, Florida, as we record this, and seeing some great stories and great photos from that. But the beauty of it is you're talking to other CMOs. You are specifically interacting with people that are going through either the same challenges or adjacent challenges to what you have. It's a smaller group, so it's more of an intimate and interactive kind of an environment. And it's a fraction of the cost. It's $500 is the regular price. It jumps up a little bit if you're the last minute price to, I think, about $1,100 if you're in the last weeks before the conference. But you could buy a ticket right now at $500 and get all the information in a day. And it's 1 day so that you can fly in and fly out and not be away from your business that long, because there's a cost for you to be away and to do that, right? So understand that. And in the final one, so I pulled up one of the digital summits. I took our team to Dallas, to the Dallas Digital Summit last month. Found that incredibly helpful. And I was in Atlanta earlier this year. And whenever they come to Charlotte, they weren't in Charlotte last year, but when they were in Charlotte, I was going to those ones as well too. And these are really helpful. Again, fraction of the cost. $795 all inclusive. You get lunch included with that for their 2-day conferences. And what happens is they have 3 different tracks. So some of these are, kind of similar to like Adobe Summit, in that there are sponsored content that's included with those as well too. But there aren't the celebrities that the pop culture celebrities. I mean, I think Ann Handley and Seth Godin are celebrities in my mind. And every time I get a chance to see a session from each of them, I've learned something new from them. And they are the people that I would go to talk to and gather information about for marketing tactics that I could use with my clients. And so I find that more helpful. I really would rather see them speak And I've gotten so much from each of those sessions. So thank you to both of them. I mean, if either of them are watching, which I doubt they will, but I've gotten a lot from them, and I'm a member of Anne's marketing profs community, and love that. Um, but the other speakers that are there, so they book 3 different rooms in a convention center every time. And those speakers are people, some of them are Marketo champions. All of them are practitioners. You see a lot of different people that are not just in marketing operations. So at the Dallas event, there was a marketing communications firm that was talking about building out an advocacy program. There's B2C customers. There are B2B companies that are there. A lot of the vendors that are displaying there had a great conversation with AdRoll, and talking about ad tech, which is a huge partner in the Marketo launch point space. And I think they're pretty involved in the Adobe Exchange space as well too. So you'll see a lot of the same thought leaders that are there, but you're actually hearing from people, and you're actually getting presentations that allow you to be able to take that take actionable advice that you can use inside of your businesses. And so if you have people that you want to bring to these summits that are like junior people that are earlier on in their career, that's a great investment to be able to do. And because the summit travels all throughout the year, if they're in your area or your neck of the woods, the Atlanta one, Atlanta's a 3-hour drive from here. So it was easy for me to be able to drive over there and see it. So area I want to, highly encourage. I am way over time here, and so I need to kind of break here a little bit here, but just to be able to kind of share with you that you have some options that are available here. Now, we'll be offering some of the, try and offer as much of these as I can as we go to different events on the Marketo Minutes website. And so, keep that bookmarked. You should get a pop-up form to be able to sign up to put in your email address to keep updated on that, and would highly encourage you to continue to do so. But gives you some thoughts, I guess, a little bit about how to stretch your dollar a little bit farther, and some of the things that you can do to be able to pivot in the ups and downs that we have in our economy. Our next Learning Lounge event, again, sorry about the earlier slide, it's January the 26th. So if you have signed up, if you're in the Zoom room right now, you'll get a copy of that as well. And otherwise, I am going to stop the recording here and go off of the stream, and we'll open it up and we'll do some questions if you've stuck around with us, and would love to be able to talk a little shop with you guys right now. Thank you so much.